Dig in kind of hard, and I'm having to on this one because the stuff's caked in there pretty good, and I'm getting a little bit more out of it to get some of that stuff out of there. Now, a little FYI, what we do here at Trikke Tampa, every wheel set that we sell that leaves this store or goes on a trike in our store, we actually inspect it. We have a test axle for testing these wheels, so that when you get one of these wheel sets from us, you don't have to worry about this. It's going to be good to go. However, on a trike, it's really hard to test that out before we ship one out, but we do our best to check for it. So this is just in case you do come across it on your trike, or if you got a wheel set somewhere else that it didn't go through this inspection. And I'll demonstrate a little bit about that inspection a little bit. So you can see we did clean some debris up in there. I'm going to take my air hose, blow the remnants out of there. I'm going to take a rag and I'm going to get down into the corner of that with my finger. All right, now we're going to put the bearings back in the wheel set. And first off, I recommend you take the bearings that you pulled out and you wipe them off, just in case there was any residual debris on them. You want to keep these bearings clean. Like I said, you can shoot some WD-40 or something like that that would kind of clean some of that thicker lubrication out of there, and it'll make them roll a little bit easier. Just remember to put a little bit of light oil back into it, like a household 3-in-1. And now that you've knocked most of that grease out, you would want to do that periodically just to prevent corrosion on your bearings. All right, so we're going to go ahead and put the bearings back in now. We've cleaned everything up. Now, I have setups for doing this that I've created. I made this little wheel holding tool that I put in an old trike stem set here, and then I also have a bearing knock, and I made both of these that work really well for putting bearings back in the trikes. Now I set it up here, get my first bearing in, and then once I get that bearing in, I flip it over, drop the spacer in, and then start to put in the next bearing. I understand everybody's not going to have this setup. Actually, I don't know who would have it because I made these. So I'm going to try and demonstrate it the old school way. I haven't done it this way in several years, but let me try and demonstrate it. So first off, you want the wheel lane. Let the air out of your tire. The reason is so that this part of the rim is going to be able to get flush up against the workbench. You might be able to do it with the air in it. I don't know, just if you have troubles, that could be why. Now, give me that grease gun, Eddie. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put a dab of grease in the bearing recess. And I'm going to use my finger and I'm going to go ahead and just rub it around the edge there. This should help for me pressing the bearing back in to not pull any more paint or possibly some aluminum shavings down in under it. So what you're going to do is with the first bearing, we're going to lay it as flush as possible on that recess. You need a good flat hammer like this ball peen hammer. This is one way to do it, and you're going to get down at eye level, and then you can tap it in there. You want to be careful, and what I'm doing at eye level, I'm making sure it's not going in crooked, that it's going down as straight as possible down into that recess. And it should go in fairly simple. There, bottomed out. Okay, don't get too aggressive with that. You want to work it in, and you want to work it in level. And don't let it get cocked like that, because once it does get cocked and you start hammering down on this side, then it's going to start shaving debris and get more debris up underneath that bearing again, as well as it could probably elongate to where your bearing just won't set in the recess as tight. So we've got this side in. Now we're going to flip it over. We're going to drop the spacer in. This is the spacer I was talking about that keeps the bearings flush. You can see where it's just the same diameter as the inner race of the bearing. That's what squares the bearings up with each other. Okay, we drop that in. Let's you get a little bit of grease in here. That's our bio grease. Okay, drop the spacer in, set your bearing in, try and set it as flush as possible, and you're going to hammer it in as flush as possible. I have a bearing knock. I like it a lot better because I'm not hitting directly on the bearing. I'll just show you how my setup works. Just like that, and that bearing is tight and flush down in there. Okay. All right, now I'm going to show you what I use for testing these, and that way I'm not taking a wheel set on and off a trike just simply for testing a wheel set. Because like I said, we test every single wheel set that we ship out of here or we sell locally, just to make sure that you don't have the troubles with the wheel set that could occasionally come up. So what it is I just have a regular axle. I have some modified spacers to accommodate or simulate what I'm using in the frame of the bike or of the trike. Comes through like that. And we're basically simulating the wheel being mounted into the trike. And now I've got to tighten it up to see if we've cleared that binding. You can see I tighten it pretty tight. Now look how free that wheel spins. And that's all it was to fixing a binding bearing. A lot of people think they have a bad bearing. If it's on a new wheel set, it's usually just debris underneath that bearing, and the bearings need to be removed and clean that debris out from underneath and reinstall the bearings, and your problem's usually resolved.